The war began as most conflicts in the galaxy did, with arrogance. The Tazaran Dominion, an empire spanning dozens of star systems, had spent millennia subjugating lesser species. When they discovered humanity's small sphere of influence on the galactic rim, they scoffed. A species without warp-gate technology, no centralized planetary defense grid, and laughably primitive weapons? The Tazarans didn't even bother sending diplomats. Why waste time negotiating when conquest was inevitable? The first human colonies fell quickly. Orbital bombardments reduced entire settlements to molten craters. The Dominion soldiers marched into the ruins with mechanical precision, expecting to find terrified survivors begging for mercy. Instead, they encountered silence. The humans were gone. It was only weeks later that the Tazarans realized the humans weren't fleeing. They were regrouping. Commander Vrylek stood on the bridge of the Tazaran flagship Koth Vanner, gazing at the holographic display of the Sol system. Earth, the human homeworld, glowed faintly at the center of the projection, a tantalizing prize. Around it, small clusters of human ships darted between the planets like gnats. Vrylek scoffed. Pathetic. They don't even have proper formations. His lieutenant, a wiry Tazaran named Kulreth, nodded in agreement. They fight like scavengers. Disorganized, chaotic. And yet, Vrylek growled, they've cost us more ships than we anticipated. Primitive or not, they are resourceful. The Dominion fleet had lost 5 cruisers in the past month. Not to pitched battles but to ambushes. Human ships would emerge from asteroid fields, launch a barrage of missiles, and vanish before the Tazarans could retaliate. It was infuriating. Vrylek had demanded an explanation from his intelligence officers, but they offered little beyond vague comments about human ingenuity. Commander, Kulreth said, pulling Vrylek from his thoughts, we've received reports from the surface of Mars. Our ground forces encountered heavy resistance in the northern settlements. Vrylek frowned. Heavy resistance? From farmers and miners? Yes, Commander. But they're using tactics we haven't seen before. Hit-and-run strikes, improvised explosives, even sabotage. The humans seem unpredictable. Vrylek clenched his fists. Unpredictable or not, they are still prey. Deploy more troops. Crush them. I want Mars secured within the week. Kulreth hesitated. Commander, there is one more thing. Before the last transmission from our forward base was cut off, the humans left a message. What message? Kulreth looked uneasy. A single sentence. You forgot rule number 1? Vrylek's mandibles clicked in frustration. What is that supposed to mean? No one knows, Commander. Vrylek dismissed the matter with a wave of his clawed hand. Humans and their cryptic sayings. It was likely some feeble attempt at psychological warfare. Still, a part of him felt uneasy. The Tazaran Dominion had faced countless species in battle, but none had fought like the humans. They didn't just resist, they adapted. On Earth, Captain Elena Vasquez surveyed the war room deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The holographic map showed the current state of the conflict. Red markers for Dominion forces, blue for humanity's dwindling fleet. The blue markers were outnumbered 10-1, but Vasquez wasn't worried. She was smiling. We've got them exactly where we want them, she said, addressing the assembled officers. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Mark Harris, raised an eyebrow. With all due respect, Captain, we're barely holding the line. The Mars colonies are in chaos, and Earth's orbital defenses won't hold against a full-scale assault. Vasquez's smile widened. Exactly. They think they've already won. That's their first mistake. And the second? They underestimated us. Harris frowned. I don't follow. Vasquez activated a console, bringing up a detailed schematic of a Tazaran cruiser. The Dominion fights with overwhelming force. They rely on their advanced technology, their massive fleets, and their sheer arrogance. But they have a blind spot. They've never fought anyone like us. Harris nodded slowly. You're talking about asymmetric warfare? Not just that, Vasquez said. I'm talking about playing to our strengths. Humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology or our numbers. It's our unpredictability. She tapped the console, and the holographic map shifted to show a detailed plan. Ambush points, supply line disruptions, and infiltration routes were highlighted in bold blue. We're going to hit them where it hurts. Their logistics, their morale, their pride. And when they think they've won, we'll remind them of rule number 1. Harris smirked. Never underestimate a human. Exactly. The Tazaran ground forces on Mars were the first to experience the full force of humanity's retaliation. What they thought was a disorganized rabble of miners and engineers turned out to be a highly coordinated resistance network. Tunnels beneath the colonies became death traps, rigged with explosives and collapsible walls. Drones equipped with rudimentary AI harassed Tazaran patrols, striking from the shadows and disappearing before they could be traced. Commander Vrylek watched the reports from Mars with mounting frustration. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. Kulreth hesitated. "They're using their environment against us, Commander. The humans know Mars better than we do. They've turned the terrain into a weapon." Vrylek snarled. "Then we'll burn it all. Deploy orbital strikes. Leave nothing but ash." "But, Commander, our forces are still—" "I don't care." Vrylek roared. "The humans must be made to understand the futility of resistance." As the Dominion fleet prepared to unleash its fury, a new report arrived. This time from Earth's moon. The humans had launched a counteroffensive, targeting Dominion supply ships and communication relays. Small strike teams infiltrated Dominion outposts, planting explosives and stealing critical data. Vrylek stared at the reports, his unease growing. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were outmaneuvering the Dominion at every turn. And then another message arrived. 3 words, broadcast on every Dominion frequency. Rule number 1 remains? For the first time Vrylek felt a flicker of doubt. What did these humans know that he didn't? The stage was set, the tension mounting. Humanity's final stand was approaching, and the Tazarans were about to learn a lesson they would never forget. The Tazaran Dominion doubled down on its assault, pouring more troops and resources into the Sol system. Commander Vrylek had staked his reputation, and possibly his life, on the conquest of humanity, and he was determined not to fail. The Dominion's fleet swarmed the Martian atmosphere, unleashing plasma bombardments that scorched the red sands and turned human settlements into rubble. On the ground, Tazaran soldiers moved in precise formations, sweeping the ruins in search of resistance fighters. But the humans were ghosts. On Mars, Lieutenant Garvak, one of Vrylek's most trusted officers, led a detachment through the shattered remains of a Martian mining colony. The area was eerily silent, save for the crunch of boots on sand and the occasional howl of wind. The Tazarans scanned the terrain with their bioscanners, searching for any signs of human activity. "Clear," one of the soldiers reported, lowering their weapon. Garvak frowned. "It's too quiet. The humans always leave traps." As if on cue, a distant explosion rocked the landscape, sending a plume of dust into the air. The Tazarans immediately raised their weapons, forming a defensive perimeter. But no attack came. The explosion was a distraction. Garvak growled in frustration. "They're toying with us. Spread out and—" He never finished the sentence. A sniper's round pierced his skull, sending him crumpling to the ground. The Tazarans panicked, firing wildly into the surrounding cliffs, but their weapons found no target. The humans had already vanished. This was the pattern across Mars. The humans didn't engage in open combat, they struck from the shadows using the terrain to their advantage. They rigged abandoned buildings with explosives, turned mining equipment into weapons, and lured Tazaran patrols into ambushes. For every Tazaran soldier killed, a dozen more were left terrified and demoralized. Back on Earth, Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the underground command center, watching the chaos unfold on the holographic display. Red markers, representing Dominion forces, flickered and disappeared as human resistance fighters struck one blow after another. Vasquez's plan was working. "They're spread too thin," Lieutenant Harris said, pointing to the map. "Their forces on Mars are in disarray, and their supply lines are barely holding." Vasquez nodded. "And we're going to make it worse." She turned to a group of officers gathered around the table. "Operation Shadowfang begins now. We've identified key Dominion supply depots on their staging ground near Jupiter. Our teams will infiltrate and destroy them." One of the officers, a grizzled veteran named Sergeant O'Reilly, smirked. "They'll never see it coming." "They won't," Vasquez said. "The Dominion relies on brute force and overwhelming numbers, but they're blind to subtlety. That's their weakness." The operation was launched within hours. Stealth ships, equipped with experimental cloaking technology, slipped past Dominion patrols and infiltrated the massive supply depots orbiting Jupiter. Human operatives planted charges on fuel reserves, weapon stockpiles and communication arrays. When the explosions came, they were spectacular. Entire sections of the depots were vaporized, sending debris scattering across the void. The Tazarans scrambled to respond, but it was too late. Their supply chain was crippled, their forces isolated and vulnerable. Commander Vrylek slammed his clawed hand on the console, his frustration boiling over. "How are they doing this?" he roared. Kulreth, his lieutenant, hesitated. "The humans are Resourceful, Commander. They've adapted to our tactics faster than anticipated. Vrylek's mandibles twitched in anger. Resourceful? They're pests. Nothing more. I want every human settlement obliterated. Leave no survivors. But, Commander, Kulreth said cautiously, if we destroy their settlements, we risk losing valuable resources. Humanity's industrial infrastructure. I don't care. Vrylek snarled. I want them broken. I want them to know the futility of defying the Dominion. Despite his bluster, Vrylek couldn't shake the growing sense of unease. The humans fought like no enemy he had ever encountered. They didn't just resist, they adapted, innovated, and exploited every weakness. And then there were the messages. Rule number 1. The phrase haunted him. It appeared in hacked transmissions, carved into the walls of abandoned outposts, even broadcast directly to his ship's communication system. It was a taunt, a challenge, a reminder that the humans were not prey. But what did it mean? On Earth, Vasquez and her team monitored the Dominion's movements closely. The destruction of the supply depots had thrown the enemy into disarray, and now was the time to strike. They're pulling back from Mars, Harris reported. Their forces are regrouping near Earth. Vasquez nodded. Good. Let them come. They think they're tightening the noose, but they're walking into a trap. Harris looked uneasy. We're still outnumbered, Captain. Even with their supply lines disrupted, they have more ships, more troops. Numbers don't win wars, Vasquez said firmly. Strategy does. And we have one thing they don't. What's that? She smiled. Rule number 1. The next phase of the plan was the most ambitious yet. Human engineers and scientists had been working tirelessly to retrofit captured Dominion technology, turning it against their oppressors. In secret facilities beneath Earth's surface, they had developed a weapon that would tip the scales. The EMP disruptor, a device capable of disabling Dominion ships in a wide radius. But deploying it would be risky. The device required close proximity to the Dominion fleet, and its activation would expose the humans to retaliation. Vasquez knew the stakes, but she also knew it was their best chance. We launch tomorrow, she said, her voice steady. And when they realize what we've done, they'll wish they never underestimated us. The Dominion fleet approached Earth in a grim display of might, their massive ships blotting out the stars. It was a show of dominance, a warning that humanity's defiance would not go unpunished. Commander Vrylek stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dicarian, glaring at the blue and green orb below. This ends today, he declared. Deploy the ground forces. Begin orbital bombardments. I want the humans to understand the price of resistance. Yes, Commander, Kulreth replied, his tone cautious. But their counterattacks have been unpredictable. Should we not? We've crushed species far more advanced than these primitives, Vrylek snapped. Do not insult me with your cowardice. Even as he spoke, the humans were already moving. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, Captain Elena Vasquez watched the Dominion fleet through a live holographic feed. The room was tense, the air thick with anticipation. Every eye was on her as she stood at the head of the command table. They think they're untouchable, Vasquez said, her voice cutting through the tension. They think we're cornered. Let's show them what happens when you back humanity into a corner. The EMP disruptor, the culmination of months of stolen tech and sleepless nights, was ready. Positioned on the dark side of the moon, it sat hidden within a makeshift base, powered by Earth's most brilliant minds. The plan was simple: draw the Dominion fleet into range, then trigger the device. But simplicity did not mean safety. Teams are in position, Harris reported. The Phantom is ready to deploy. The Phantom was a stealth ship designed to slip past Dominion sensors and deliver the EMP disruptor into the heart of the enemy formation. It was a one-way trip, and the crew on board knew it. Sergeant O'Reilly, the ship's commander, appeared on the comms. We're locked and loaded, Captain. Give us the word. Vasquez hesitated just for a moment. These were her people, and she was sending them to their deaths. But hesitation wouldn't save humanity. Good luck, O'Reilly, she said. Activate on my command. In orbit, the Dominion fleet unleashed their fury. Massive plasma beams rained down on Earth, shattering cityscapes and igniting the skies. Tazaran dropships descended through the chaos, deploying wave after wave of troops. The humans fought back with a ferocity that belied their dwindling numbers, using every dirty trick and improvised weapon at their disposal. But it wasn't enough, not yet. The ground forces were only a distraction. On the Phantom, O'Reilly and his crew watched as the Dominion fleet moved into position. The massive ships formed a blockade, their weapons trained on the planet below. It was a perfect formation, tight, efficient, and completely vulnerable. They're lining up like dominoes, O'Reilly said with a grim smile. They have no idea. The ship's pilot, a young woman named Jenkins, glanced back. Think this thing will actually work? O'Reilly shrugged. If it doesn't, we won't be around to complain. The Phantom slipped closer, weaving through the Dominion fleet like a shadow. Dominion sensors flickered, momentarily detecting the ship before losing it again. The humans had learned how to exploit the Dominion's over-reliance on their advanced technology, and now they were turning it against them. As they approached the center of the fleet, O'Reilly keyed the comms. We're in position, Captain. Ready to light the fireworks? Vrilek stared at the holographic display on his bridge, his mandibles twitching in irritation. The humans were putting up more of a fight than he had expected. His ground forces were bogged down, facing fierce resistance in the ruins of Earth's cities. And now his sensors were acting up, displaying ghost readings that flickered in and out. Report, he barked. Kulreth hesitated. There's an anomaly in our formation. A ship, but it doesn't match any known human design. Then destroy it. Kulreth's claws danced over the controls, directing the fleet's weapons toward the anomaly. But before they could fire, the anomaly disappeared. Vrilek's unease grew. What are they playing at? On Earth, Vasquez watched the display, her heart pounding. The Phantom was in place, but the window of opportunity was closing fast. The Dominion fleet was beginning to notice the intruder. Do it, she ordered. Activate the disruptor. On the Phantom, O'Reilly nodded to his crew. It's been an honor, folks. See you on the other side. Jenkins hit the activation switch, and the EMP disruptor roared to life. A blinding pulse of energy erupted from the ship, spreading outward in an invisible wave. Dominion ships froze in place, their systems overloaded by the sudden surge. Lights flickered, engines sputtered, and weapons went silent. The Phantom disintegrated in the blast, but its sacrifice had done its job. The Dominion fleet was crippled. Vrilek stumbled as the Dicarian shuddered violently. The lights on the bridge dimmed, and the hum of the ship's engines faded to silence. What happened? He demanded. Kulreth's voice was panicked. An EMP pulse, Commander. Our systems are unresponsive. Vrilek's claws curled into fists. The humans? Before he could finish the thought, the holographic display flickered to life. A human face appeared, Captain Vasquez, her expression calm but resolute. Rule number 1, Commander, she said. Never underestimate humanity. And then the feed cut out. On the ground, the human resistance surged forward, seizing the moment. With the Dominion fleet in disarray, their ground forces were isolated and vulnerable. Human fighters took back their cities, using guerrilla tactics to dismantle the invading forces piece by piece. In the skies, the few human ships still operational moved in to finish the job. Salvaged Dominion weapons were turned against their creators, tearing through the disabled fleet. The battle was far from over, but for the first time humanity had the upper hand. And they weren't about to let it slip away. The Dominion fleet was in complete chaos. Ships once considered indomitable floated lifelessly in Earth's orbit, darkened hulks stripped of their power. The EMP disruptor had done its job, and now humanity's counterstrike had begun in earnest. Captain Vasquez stood in the underground command center, monitoring the battle as reports flooded in. The room was alive with a mix of triumph and urgency as human forces coordinated their assault. The remnants of Earth's orbital defenses had risen from the ashes, salvaged and repurposed to turn Dominion technology against its creators. We've breached the Dicarian's outer hull, reported Major Harris from a terminal. Teams are moving in to secure the bridge. Good, Vasquez said, her tone firm. Tell them to take Commander Vrilek alive. I want him to see what happens when you underestimate us. On board the Dicarian, Commander Vrilek paced the dimly lit bridge, his claws clicking against the floor. The once pristine vessel was now a wreck, its corridors filled with smoke and the distant sounds of combat. He could feel his empire slipping away, his confidence replaced by something alien to him, fear. How could this happen? He muttered to himself. How could these primitives? A deafening explosion cut him off as the blast doors to the bridge were breached. Human soldiers stormed in, their weapons trained on Vrilek and his remaining officers. They moved with precision, their faces hardened by months of war. Vrilek's officers tried to resist, but the humans dispatched them with ruthless efficiency. One soldier stepped forward, her helmet gleaming in the dim light. She removed it, revealing a face Vrilek recognized from the earlier transmission, Captain Vasquez. Commander Vrilek, she said, her voice cold. You're coming with us. Vrilek's mandibles clicked in defiance. You think you've won? This is only a minor setback. The Dominion will not save it, Vasquez interrupted. Your fleet's gone, your ground forces are in retreat, and your empire is about to learn what it means to lose. Now move. 2 soldiers stepped forward, restraining Vrylek as Vasquez turned back toward the breach. Back on Earth, the celebrations were muted but palpable. People emerged from underground bunkers and devastated cities, their faces a mix of relief and determination. Humanity had survived, but the scars of the invasion were everywhere. At the command center, Vasquez watched as Vrylek was brought in under heavy guard. The alien commander looked smaller now, his arrogance stripped away. He was led to a reinforced cell where he sat silently, his eyes filled with a mix of rage and confusion. Vasquez stepped up to the cell's transparent barrier. I hope you're taking notes, Commander. You'll need to explain to your Dominion leaders how a primitive species managed to turn your fleet into scrap. Vrylek hissed but said nothing. He was learning the hard way that humans were far from the prey the Dominion had believed them to be. Weeks later, the galaxy was abuzz with the news of the Dominion's defeat. Vasquez stood on the deck of a human flagship, now armed with salvaged Dominion technology. Earth had not only defended itself but had seized the means to ensure it would never be threatened again. Humanity was no longer a passive player in the galaxy. They had made their presence known, and the message was clear. Anyone who underestimated them would pay the price. As the flagship prepared to leave Earth's orbit, Vasquez looked out at the stars. We're not just survivors, she said softly. We're contenders. And with that, humanity's journey into the wider galaxy truly began, no longer as prey but as predators.